Hello, and welcome everyone to our Wednesday's news series, where we hear from social entrepreneurs around the world about timely topics and solutions. And today's topic is very timely. My name is Saenz de Miera. I'm part of the Ashoka team based in Spain, and today's interview is a very special one for me, and you will hear later why. And before we get started, just a reminder that we love hearing from you as we move along. And feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of our Zoom screen, and we'll get to as many as we can in the second half of the interview. And now I'd love to introduce today's guest, Kelly Davies, former professional football player for Arsenal and Liverpool, Ashoka Fellow, and now co-leading an initiative at Ashoka focused on sports as a catalyst for change in a world of changemakers. I must admit, Kelly, that I'm a big fan of you, and I'm really excited to interview you today. Because we are both women, we both love football. You as a professional player and me as a school football amateur, but I love it. You are English and I'm Spanish. So I think the Welcome Change team made a good choice, picking us to speak today about the now, fortunately and unfortunately, worldwide famous women's final between England and Spain, that Spain won, in the Women's World Cup. I think this is a victory for sports, for feminism, a Spanish Me Too, and there are so many important highlights in this World Cup that people still don't know. Can you share some of them?
Yeah, so first of all, congratulations, because I do actually believe you were very worthy World Cup champions. I was very impressed by the quality. And yeah, you are completely right. The front page headlines that should have been seen, I think, are that, Spain is the first team in history to hold all three. So we're talking under 17s, under 20s, and senior World Cup titles simultaneously after its women won all three. And to add this, I think Spain has made its senior World Cup debut in only 2015, and it's only the fifth nation to lift the trophy as well. So that's one of the headlines. Another headline is that 900 million was generated in revenue, which is it is the second highest income generated from a global sporting event. Another headline that should have been told was probably that the final had a global audience of 1.2 billion. There was almost 2 million fans that attended the games in person, and with new attendance records being set on a daily basis. I think it was at least 96 out LGBTQ plus athletes took part. 44 players took responsibility for their environmental impact for their flights to and from. There was 23 players from the German national team that pledged a percentage of their prize money to support projects that give equal participation opportunities for girls. The Spain captain was the first player in history to win the World Cup, the Champions League twice, the Ballon d'Or twice, a treble, and was the best FIFA player in the world. Now, these are the headlines, and these headlines could go on and on and on, and they were never mentioned.
Incredible to hear, and many more. So another question I have for you, Kelly. I'm 42 now, and when I was a girl in school, I wasn't allowed to play football. That was only for boys. So it's not that far away. It's far away, but not that much. And we could only choose between basketball and volley. I still remember being an activist, and we made it, and we became the first football team in school, But I've lived gender inequality myself, and I was wondering, do you believe that this World Cup marks the beginning of a new era for gender equality? And in what aspects do you think it is? And in which areas do you believe there is still a long way to go?
Yeah, so I think I personally believe the European Championships last summer, which England actually won. So we're 1-1 here. We're 1-1 here now. Was the beginning of a new era for gender equality in sports. And I think as a result of this World Cup, what I think it's done is it's further highlighted that we are definitely now in that era, and it needs to be recognized that this is a really historical moment in time. You know, these major events have essentially tipped us from that 1% of early adopters to now the masses, the global masses. And I think we are all sort of well aware, really, that this is now going to change the game completely. And whilst, you know, I think it's really important, and I was having this discussion the other day, I think whilst it's really important that we celebrate the progress made to date to get us to this point, we also have to acknowledge where we were. You know, it's seriously not acceptable that women's football was so big during like the World War One, and it had a drawing crowds of like 53,000, and then somebody made a decision, actually we're going to completely ban it. So we have to acknowledge where we were and all the battles that have been fought over the last few years to even get us to play. And I still think that we actively need to really push for change here, as there's still a really, really long way to go, really. It was only up until recently, and probably largely in reaction to a public petition started by a young change maker, as we would describe her. Nike did not sell England female goalkeeper tops, and Mary Earps is the best goalkeeper, female goalkeeper in the world. And then we also had, even going into the World Cup, you know, we had a time where Jamaican female football players, who should have been solely focused on preparing to compete on the world's largest scale and their biggest honour, and they were unfortunately having to express that they had so much utter disappointment in their national federation because they'd missed friendlies. There was so much disorganization in their camps. They had no nutritional plans. They didn't know what was happening. They didn't even know if it was actually going ahead. They turned up to a major tournament not knowing if they actually had a contract or how they were going to get compensated. You know, we have to acknowledge progress has been made, but there's so much more to go, and you know, we really can't rest on this, and we have to continue to push and push, really.
I'm so impressed. I hadn't heard many of these things you are sharing, and they are so recent, no? So Kelly, this is a very personal and selfish question maybe, but I'm a mother of 4 young daughters, and there's something that really worries me, and it's that I hear that by the age of 14, many girls are dropping out of sports at 2 times the rate of boys. And it makes me angry. Why do you think this happens? Is it because the lack of role models? Is it because the facilities of teams and sports are not as good as boys when they get older? Is it because it's perceived boyish in a way to practice sports, which is something that I lived myself? What do you think? And I know this is not an easy question.
No, but I think, in all honesty, it's all of the above. You know, when you talk about role models, you simply can't be what you can't see. And if we don't, you know, if you're a young girl, you need to have these role models that you can aspire to become. And even when I was 14, I very nearly dropped out because I didn't have those role models. But then you can also look at like facilities. They're not in any way, or haven't been in the past, designed to be female friendly. Like, why would you want to turn up to a facility where they only have urinals that do not smell that great in the toilets, or where there's limited like floodlit coverage for where you're turning up on a pitch that's at the furthest away, and you've been given the latest slot at night because the boys have had priority and so have the men, and it's really, really dark. And why would you want to turn at them when you're on, or you're being pushed on, and boys are kicking a ball against the side of the wall and it's just crashing? It doesn't create this environment in facilities that are particularly welcome. And then you've got opportunities like girls football and I can only give an English perspective here, but girls football has only become a compulsory part of the curriculum in the last 12 months, and that was because the Lionesses won the Euros. For boys, there's always been this unlimited access to opportunities. And ultimately, I think it's a lack of investment. And I also think it's also having, a lack of representation on the boards of national governing bodies where these decisions are made right at the top, because we need to have more females on boards where these decisions are taken. Because when you have both, and you do have that a female in the boardroom that is championing this and fighting for the investment, it's proven now that when you do invest, you do get a return in investment, and you've seen that the results are evident to be seen all around the world.
It's so close, it's so real, and so important, not to advance in this way. So Kelly, I have a question that I couldn't miss today, and also I didn't want this to be the only topic we talk about today, and it's the Rubioles non-consensual kiss to Gianni Hermoso. Unfortunately, this represents much more than this kiss, and has overshadowed almost everything else in the championship. I'm not saying that this overshadowing, I think it shouldn't have overshadowed. I think at the same time, it's good that it has created this public conversation. And he has been condemned by society worldwide. I don't think, there are some exceptions as Woody Allen and others, but I think the consensus in the society has been huge. Have you experienced this type of situations in your life as a football player or sports person? Also, how do you think this issue has been handled, looking at it from outside of Spain? And what more needs to be achieved, that we can learn from this moment?
So I never really experienced it as a player personally. But I have experienced as an executive and a board member. And I won't go into too much detail here, because that's probably another session where we really revisit this and unpack it.
Maybe
but I have to admit, actually, that at the time when it happened, I laughed it off. And I think that's because we were always conditioned to do it. It was like, this just happened, so you just laugh it off and you move on. And I was not brave enough to call it out at the time, actually. And it's something that I reflect on quite often with a friend over a glass of wine, because these questions come up now, particularly in the last few weeks, and you think, actually, I wasn't brave enough to call it out, but maybe I wouldn't be where I am if I had called it out at that time. It's one of those. But in terms of this issue, I think, well, it's been handled in an absolutely appalling way. And for those who maybe don't with the English, it's like an absolutely terrible way, really. It should never have gone this far, I don't think. I think if there would have been an acceptance from how someone feels, because ultimately at the center of this, you've got a human being that says, I wasn't comfortable with this. You can't deny it. This happened. I didn't feel comfortable with this. And I think if you'd have accepted that and given a deeply meant apology, and then a commitment to change moving forward, and saying, actually, I can see, I don't think it had gone this so far, and I think things would have not escalated in the way they did, really. But instead, we've seen how it is played out now, and I think in many ways as well that there is there's a positive spin on this, that actually everybody globally just said, we're not putting up with this, and we're going to get behind her. But I think it showed more widely as well that I think the system and the football system at so many levels is still broken. And I think we have to accept that. There's no need to criticize. I just think that we have to accept that it is broken in many, many ways. And that in order to fix that system, we need to equip the entire sort of football ecosystem. I'm talking executives, fans, players, managers, with the sort of a different mindset and the capabilities to be able to navigate that change successfully, act differently, and also for the good of all. Because otherwise, we're in danger of not fixing the system, papering over the cracks, and what will happen is we could be faced with a similar issue like this in the next World Cup or in another event and different things like that. So we sort of have to fix the system, really. What do you think?
I think the management was awful. I think that when we all saw the pictures of these 20 men taking the decision of not doing anything with Rubiales, it was, this can't be men. No, it also showed what happens with this system, where it's men, and men deciding about women. And the only good thing that I see is that it has become an inflection point, where I do hope, I'm a little bit optimist here, that this can't happen again or anything similar, because it has been too big. No, this Acabó movement that has been born now. No, and I think this movement shows the power of sports to bring changes in society and fight against injustices. And I think when I imagine the possibilities, if the entire ecosystem, not only football one, but sports one, felt invited and capable of contributing to change and bringing change maker, I am an optimist. And I think that this case unfortunately shows or reminds the power of sports to bring changes. No? So I would love to hear from you, which is the biggest thing that you think sports could bring to the world? And do you have any specific ideas of actions to get there? Not only football, I would say sports in general.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is that I think we share a very common dream. I think we shared in the past the dream to play football, and now we share this common dream between us, which is why we both light up and smile, because actually, you know, the dream is that people truly realize that unlocking this power in every individual is the only way that we're going to get the kind of world that we want, and where the solutions outrun the problems, and see for the good of all is the norm. That we share that dream. And I think what sports has to offer is it's a platform, and it's a global platform that engages the vast majority, which it does, and it has a power that many other things don't. And it's that opportunity to amplify a conversation, take action, create social innovations. You know, the dream is that this ecosystem of sport will be leveraged with intention and purpose, and everybody will thrive. And this can happen by, you know, we've touched upon it. You can create an ecosystem so everybody plays plays their part in the sports, from schools to professional teams to, you know, individual fans. You know, everybody can feel they have agency and purpose, and that would be really, you know, really positive thing to have. And also, you know, the leveraging the role of teams, clubs, brands, etc., to foster greater, you know, social cohesion amongst community levels with different perspectives, different belief structures, and more sporting organisations who are key players, like remembering that they're the connection really between the community at local level, and then the planet, and then the business side. So it's all that. And how this looks like when it comes together is probably a really good question. And it's likely that it's not just going to be one great action that we're all going to take, but a series of actions that I think are going to have to come together, and over a period of time. You know, we need to continue to identify, support, amplify what social entrepreneurs, social innovators have to offer in this space, and new solutions and new ways of thinking. We have to open that up. We need to leverage moments when everyone's eyes are on sport, really, you know, such as the Women's World Cup in this case, you know, to fuel a new narrative, major events, you know, celebrate the athlete change makers that we mentioned right at the start, that we're taking environmental action, but nobody's ever heard about it. Those things that I reeled off at the start, everybody would probably go, oh, I didn't know about that. You know, we need to encourage viewers to take action and explore, you know, the impact of sport through that lens. And maybe the really important one, I think, is we probably need like radical collaboration, really. And I think this is probably the biggest thing, really. The world of sport shows us that we can come together, and more every day we can come together on matters like this, not just to compete, but to show the world that we can create long lasting change together, really. So it's not just one action to be taken, it's a series, and we really need to sort of embark on this next phase of the journey for women's sport and women's football.
I love them. Not easy, but I think it's very important, and this radical collaboration. And I think that sports has something unique, which is fun. And people have fun watching, have fun playing. And I think this is an opportunity, or this is how I perceive it. So I'm anxious because
can I just add on to that?
Yes.
Just before you don't go to questions, because it's really important that you just added that on, because I literally just had a conversation with a guy called Jack, and he's 82, and he runs the Fit for Life Foundation. And he said to me, the biggest thing that sport has, it's fun and it's adventure. And I think that should never, ever be underestimated, because actually it makes life really great.
And we all want to have fun. So now going to the questions from the audience, that I love them because some of them I've had them already with my friends around a cup of wine. 2 of them are around equal pay. And here the question says, the argument often used to oppose it is that women's football does not make the same money in terms of TV rights and advertising. What do you think about this?
We exactly say that we often have this conversation over the dinner table, and what we really, I think it comes down to percentages potentially, and splits, as opposed to the amounts, because what we ultimately want to build is quite the opposite to maybe the male game, where actually it is financially sustainable. It does have longevity. It is done in the right way. And at the moment, if, there has to be a financial perspective to this, that if actually we started paying the same wages to females as what the males are, the clubs would go bust overnight, because it just wouldn't work unless there was a big investor behind it. So I often say maybe it's about having percentages that are comparable against the revenue that comes in, so they're equal. It might help with the longevity and the financial sustainability of it, because what I really wouldn't like is to make all of this progress and then not do it in a sustainable way. And it's a difference between what we can set up for the future, for the female game, and maybe what the men often face problems with.
Good answer, Kelly. So another question, this is a quick one. It says, I watched a few of the televised World Cup matches and was surprised to see so few women coaches. I fall in love with the England one. Why do you think this happens? Does it need to change as we shift to more gender equity in sport?
Yeah, so I think I think the first thing is we do have to accept there are not as many female coaches in the game. And that's the first. I think we just have to accept that. And I think it's just exactly the same. The reasons for it are probably the same as what we discussed about the playing opportunities. There aren't the role models. So you can't be what you can't see. The facilities are not necessarily welcoming for a female coach either, because you might put coaching sessions or give the slots for the coaching sessions at 9 o'clock at night, and a female may have a family, or a female coach may have a family. There's lots of the investment really in the opportunities. If we invest and create the opportunities and the role models, we will get more female coaches coming through over the next few years, and then creating the pathways for them to truly thrive. Whereas in the past, I think the pathways have probably stopped those that were pushing against, against a brick wall at many times. The system was set up to push them further and further back, and then they end up getting tired and burnt out and think, why should I keep doing this? So I think they're very similar issues. If we get, I think we touched upon it, and I will continue to stress this, and it's one of the reasons why I took up a board decision. If we can get females in boardrooms where key decisions are made about these things, then the opportunities will be provided for female players, female coaches, female executives, females in media. It will change the game.
Hopefully. Now Spain has a women coach. I have so many questions here. So another one is around teams. It's about team sports in schools where boys and girls play together. And here say, I noticed that my own girls tend to be less eager to play soccer, football when teams are co-ed. They report not getting the ball and having to sit on sidelines. What do you think about mixed teams? Well,
I think the first thing is I know exactly how that young person feels, because I used to be that person that they would never pass the ball to, that they would always pick last, and it's awful when you get picked last, even though you might be the best. So there's all of those things to fully understand, but I think I really think that providing opportunities for girls to play amongst girls is one of the key things. I think what happens is then that there should also be opportunities that if we find girls that are progressing, to a point where they may become an elite or a profession, like they have signs of going through the pathways to become a professional female footballer, then it can also really benefit them to play against boys from a physical point of view. So when I was 14, 15, 16, I used to play with the boys that were older than me then, and even higher with my older brothers and my friends, my dad's friends and different things. And it really stood me in good stead. So to answer, I think it's really important to provide female opportunities, but then there is also benefits in as they progress through maybe to the elite level, that there's mixed opportunities as well.
So not one or other, but maybe finding
a balance.
A balance, as always in life. And the last question, Kelly, is there any kind of international network that carries out a survey on access to sport and soccer among women? Do you know if there are any criteria to measure it currently?
My instinct is that not internationally. I think somebody was recently, I heard somebody was thinking of carrying out one of these surveys to look at the whole pathway. I think it's something that will happen in the next 6 to 12 months, if I'm being honest, because it needs to be done.
See if someone here wants to run it, see an opportunity here. So we need to finish. Thank you very much, Kelly. It has been a real pleasure to chat with you. I'm kind of wanting to play football this afternoon. And I come out of this interview really optimistic. No, I think this is why we are smiling, even if we are, as you said, talking about injustices and sad things that have happened this World Cup. For me, the most important thing is to remember that over 3 billion fans follow football worldwide, which is half of humanity. So the power of something that excites, is fun for half of humanity to make a difference is huge. No? So happy that Ashoka and you are co-leading this work on sports and this survey that you just did. And we could go on for hours with this important topic, but time is over. I invite the Welcome Change team to do a part 2, because I think there's so many things that we could have spoken about, and sexual orientation and many other things, trans player. So there is an idea for a future Welcome Change. And thank you for all of you listening. Look up for a follow-up email with today's recording, highlights, and things that you can later share. And we hope you'll join next time. Welcome Change is a weekly series talking about the future, where we want to live, and the role we can all play. So you can sign up to next Welcome Changes in the link in the chat. Thank you, everyone, and take care.